far left would have you believe that Donald Trump is a racist, he's a misogynist, he's a tax cheat, he's a Russian plant, he's bad to his grandmother. I don't know, the worst things ever that you could imagine. There is no good in the man. He never did any good. He ought to be in prison. The right would have you believe that Donald Trump was the greatest president ever in American history, most likely. And he had us oil independent, energy independent, and he did such great things. He didn't take a salary, and he wasn't even paid for what he was doing, and he just can't do any wrong. He's the greatest thing ever. The trouble with that is, you're both wrong. And here's why. Former President Donald J. Trump. I'd like to be clear before we get started in earnest here. See this here? Democrat, Republican, two sides, same coin. I have no dog in this fight. I have no horse in this race. One of the most polarizing figures perhaps ever. And I also, when it's cold out here, I got heat, but if I run the heat, then it makes the sound and then the stuff and the, okay. So where to begin? I made a list of good and bad because there's no possible chance I have at remembering all this stuff. But I want to start on a good note because it seems to be the popular thing to bash the man. So as president, let's start with something positive that he accomplished. $367 billion saved by imposing tariffs on, this is bizarre, aluminum, steel, solar panels, washing machines, whatever, and $200 billion in Chinese goods of various assortments. That is a fantastic accomplishment, I think, and long overdue. I wouldn't have messed around with, I don't know what he did, 20%, 25%? I wouldn't have messed around with it. I just said 75% import tax. You want to do business over there with a communist country, you're going to pay 75%. You got 6 months to get those jobs back over here and start building stuff here with American employees, or you're getting 75% tax. But he did. Either way, it's a positive. It's a good thing. Long overdue. And something not so great. Bad, even, if you're speaking in English. $7.8 trillion deficit in 4 years. That was more than 5.0 for Obama in 8 years, and 6.9 trillion for George W. Bush also in 8 years. One term, 7.8 trillion with the T dollars. That is not good. Net neutral in energy. Fantastic. Excellent job. Long overdue. Could have been done by any one of them. See, there's an agenda here. And it's just that I'm getting there. Net neutral. So we weren't energy independent. We did import oil. We also exported a lot. And we exported a smidge more than we imported. That drove gasoline prices down, crude oil prices down. And everybody knows, as we're seeing now and living out, that when the fuel prices get higher, everything gets more expensive. So props on the energy policy. Fantastic job. Promised to cut discretionary spending in half and repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare health insurance. He didn't pursue either one of those issues after 2017. He also left with the largest peacetime deficit in American history. Bad. F. Very bad. He helped in part to expose the corrupt mainstream media. Excellent. When you have the President of the United States standing behind a podium saying, fake news, you fake news. I don't do a good Trump impression. I just don't. But this is also long overdue. If you still think that the mainstream media is legitimate and out for your best interest and fair and balanced and neutral, I can't really help you because that's just not the case. And he helped in large part, along with this kind of stuff that you're seeing right now, to expose that for what it really is. Again, long overdue. Props to you, A+. Closed down the United States economy and did not fire Fauci, even though he later went on to call him all the things that he called him, because that's what he does, is in part is call people names. Why didn't you get rid of Fauci? You knew what he was. You had that power. You had that authority to get rid of him. Why did you not do so? F. And in hindsight, what we know now, and that couldn't be an argument. Well, we didn't know. We didn't know everything then that we knew now. We knew pretty darn early on. Closing the economy was a horrific mistake, and we in this country may not ever recover from that. So F- on that one. He built some of a border wall, and the crazy part of that is the funding for the materials and the materials themselves, and my understanding of it, I could be wrong, my understanding is all the materials were purchased and available and waiting on installation, and the current administration scrapped them, as in threw them away. There's a good idea. Sweet Moses on high. Built some of a border wall. A+, that is needed. Countries have borders and they have walls. I'm going to go C+, B- on the wall thing. However, what happened to it's going to be a big, beautiful wall. I'm gonna not only build a wall, but I'm gonna get the Mexicans to pay for it, or at least the Mexican president, something like that. That disappeared in just short order. I'm not gonna sweat the detail, but building some of the wall, C+. Some's better than none, I think. Yeah, C+. What about lock up Hillary? Lock her up. Yes. Gotta lock up Hillary. That just wasn't even on the agenda. It just wasn't, they just didn't hear about it anymore. What happened to that? F. Kept China, Russia, and North Korea, somewhat mostly at bay. A+. Now, I don't know what was said behind closed doors. You don't either. I know that the things going on now weren't happening then. So, A+. Were we at peace for 4 years? It seems like there was a bombing of Yemen. Airstrikes, mostly. 133 different raids, most of them with airstrikes. That is not peacetime for 4 years. That, sir, is an F. Repeal and replacement of the Affordable Care Act. It was under his watch repealed. That's A+. There, as far as I'm concerned. Now, the fact that it wasn't replaced, to me, is also A+. Because everything that the government touches turns into a big steaming turd. We know this by now. The government has no place, in my opinion, being involved in healthcare. None. They were the ones that made the prices so high to begin with, at least in large part. So, as far as I'm concerned, A+, A+. You repealed it, well, sort of, kind of, and you didn't replace it with anything. That's a win. What about draining the swamp? I'm going to go D-. This is a tough one because it's not possible. The ensconced corruption is so prevalent in everything from start to bottom up there in the Washingtons and the DCs of Columbia's. You can't. You find yourself JFK'd, I imagine, in pretty short order. That's a hard one to grade. I didn't see it. I'm gonna have to go, I don't know, maybe this one doesn't get a grade. Because it's not possible. Not in the confines of in the established structures we have now. If I'm pushed to give a grade, I'm going to say D-. You did promise it. You did say it over and over. We're going to drain the swamp. You didn't drain anything. I mean, D- is pretty generous, I think. We also have to talk about inflation, which in real life is what now? 18%, 27%? It's hard to know. This business of 6 or 8% or whatever they're telling you this month isn't realistic because they've cut out, you know, the deal. They've changed 4 times since the 1980s at least. They've changed the factoring measures and what constitutes inflation. They're leaving out altogether fuel and food. Well, that's a pretty major thing to leave out, I think. But let's not pretend that we wouldn't have any. Let's pretend for a second that Trump gets reelected. You don't think you'd have inflation? You pump $6 trillion into this economy and stimmy checks and everything, and you don't think prices are going to go up? Come on, man. I hate to even quote that guy, but here's something that was in his control, and it didn't. What about the release of the JFK files? I believe by law, those were supposed to be released in 2017. Initially, it was supposed to be the early 2000s and then the late 90s. By law, all those files are to be released. I think he did a dump of like 4,000 documents. There's like 14,000 some odd that they're just still sitting on, which tells you they're complicit in it. Otherwise, what is there to hide? All those people are dead. But the systems aren't dead. The alphabet agencies are alive and unwell as they have always been. So, my point being is that the trumpet could have released those, and he didn't. That's an F. Now, there are, well, obviously supporters of Mr. Trump that would tell you he is the greatest American president ever. Well, first of all, he's the United States president, and we'll get into that on a later video. But you're not even close to being correct on that. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not even really sorry about it. That's just the fact. Now, was he the greatest, or was he the best of a really sorry lot and the best that the Republican Party has seen in a long, long time? I mean, his own party didn't want him as the candidate. That right there tells you how corrupt and this whole thing is. They kind of forcibly took him because they didn't have any other show pony to roll out there that had a puncher's chance. They didn't have it. So fine, we'll go with Trump. And couldn't wait, I'm sure, to get him out the door, get back to business as usual. And that's exactly what happened. So figure that out. It's crazy. So what came after? Well, you know good and well what came after. We're living in it. Now, I gotta be honest about the thing. Most of the things that the president now does aren't within his scope of authority to begin with. This business of executive orders, that was done in World War II. It was done prior to that, yeah. But the flood came during World War II using an emergency. They stated right in there, executive orders are for emergencies. What they did was cite the Trading with the Enemies Act of 1919, which declared you and me the enemy, and communist countries. But they used that, and it's still an ongoing emergency, so here's some more executive orders. Those are for government employees and government territories, like District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, Mariana Islands, military bases, and so on and so forth. Those are not for the American people. But we're still rolling out those executive orders like nobody's business. They never work in your favor. They never work in my favor. When are we going to catch on? The system isn't for us, and it isn't gonna be for us. I'm sorry to end the illusion. You probably already knew, I would imagine. So overall grade, President Donald Trump. That's a tough one. He was sure good at throwing gasoline on a fire, which was somewhat humorous to watch, but I don't know that it was very good for the country. In fact, I know just the opposite. Personally, I don't want to see him roll again unless the alternative is keeping what we have or some other version of it, because that's even worse. It's evil and diet evil, and I don't much enjoy ingesting diet evil. Soda pop aside, it's just not my thing. I'd like to see somebody that was actually beneficial to the country. Unfortunately, I think they would be, JFK'd in short order too. It's sad and it's ugly. What I'd like for the rest of the world to remember, if you just so happen to be watching, is, wasn't us, man. We're just like you. We're just trying to get by. We're just trying to live our lives. And we don't really have a say over our government. People don't like it. We just vote. Vote for what? For what they trot out in front of you every time? Your choice is this and this. Pick one. Now you have a choice. Wasn't it Mark Twain that said if voting really mattered, they wouldn't let us do it? So perfect. I don't like to get too, you lose people really quick in the politics. But Donald Trump is a historically significant figure for sure, and somebody that needed to be addressed, I thought. So I did. Tell me what you think. Leave it in your comments. Try to, sort of keep civil if you want. I'm sure I left some things out. What other good things did he do? And what other bad things? And it sure seems to be the two sides. There's no in between. Another thing I heard one time, I couldn't tell you by who because I can't remember, but long time ago. And they said, maybe Jesse Ventura now that I think about it. But he said, just remember, having two parties to choose from is one more than they've had under every communist dictator that ever was. That's something to think about and chew on. If you don't mind, if you haven't already, throw me a subscription and comments, likes if you want. I don't know. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time.